On this week's show, we're discussing Hellblade 2, Senua's Saga, reviews, and first impressions from myself, because I have finished it. A new Astro Bot game incoming from PlayStation within the next weeks, surely there's a showcase on the horizon, and IGN creating a gaming news monopoly. All that and much, much more on this week's GamerGuild Podcast. Good game, everyone, and welcome back to the GamerGuild Podcast, your weekly show where we get together and round up all the weekly gaming news for your listening and viewing pleasure right here on youtube.com/GamerGuildTV and available up there in the digital clouds on your podcast platform of choice. We've got a great show for you this week, and your podcast players are not Richie this week. I'm joined with the fantastic triumphant return. We've actually replaced Richie fully, permanently now. We haven't really. With our chaotic neutral, Rob. Welcome back.
Thank you. Who's this guy? I hear some people thinking.
Who's this guy?
But, yeah.
That's it. For clarity's sake, Richie is in Rome. He's on holiday. He's taking a well-deserved break. He's probably listening to this and giggling along. He will be back next week. But yes, I thought let's dig deep into the bag and find who we can get. And of course, our other co-host just happened to be there waiting in the wings. Rob, how have you been? What have you been playing? How's work and life treating you?
I've been good. For anybody who's missing Richie, you'll no doubt get the full details of his trip next episode, so don't worry about that. I've been good. One thing I will say is I've been off the show for, I'm not sure how much you filled.
I can't even remember. No, it's a couple of weeks, I would guess.
But anybody who tells you that starting your own business will give you freedom to be your own boss and do what you want is a liar. I was going to.
You can swear. You can swear.
It was absolute fucking liar, right? Absolute liar. So my life has been kind of consumed at the moment by a couple of different things, work related. So when it comes to gaming, I've been very, very safe, and I've been sticking to what I know, and that what I know is Helldivers 2. It's Fallout 4 since I finished watching the TV show, and it's a bit of Hearts of Iron, but kind of like 20-minute blocks when I can find time.
Iron. I've never heard of that.
Hearts of Iron. Oh, sit down. Let me tell you all about it.
I'm already sat. Let's go.
I've got about 400 hours in that game already.
400 hours. How have I never heard of it then? If it's that.
So it's a Paradox game.
Right. Okay.
So it's like a grand strategy, and it's basically like you recreate World War II. But you pick like a faction, and then you manage your industry. You deploy your troops, you equip them, you build divisions, and you essentially just play a part in that conflict. It's like a super, super in-depth type of 4X strategy as well, so it's right up my street.
It's like 7-year-old. It's not recent.
No, it's 7-year-old, but you get DLCs every 6 months. So you for anybody who hasn't played it, you control the land war, the air war, and the naval battles. So each kind of update kind of focuses either on a particular faction or on a particular kind of way one of those combat fields works or something. And it's really cool because it's like a game where, say if you're playing for the UK, you can decide, okay, I'm going to focus all my resources into my navy, and I'll just dominate the seas, and that's how I'll contribute to the war effort. Or you can go kind of all in on fighter production, so you can do the fight the air war for the allies or whatever, and it's like that. So it's infinitely replayable, and just a really, really fun game to kind of unwind on.
It looks like Risk, but with more depth to it.
Essentially that, yeah. It's like Risk with super, super deep spreadsheets and that type of thing.
Oh, there's many people who play Risk like that. I assure you as well.
Totally, yeah.
Yeah, I'm just looking at a bit of the gameplay now. It's definitely in depth, but I can see it. So 400 plus hours.
Oh yeah, that's been conservative as well. It's just again infinitely replayable. You can do crazy things you can play as Greece, and then you restore Greece's empire from history.
Oh wow!
Do certain alternate history things, or if you're if you're the UK, you can turn like fascist and then take over America again, and then you reform the Imperial Federation and stuff like that. So
wow, so it's proper in depth then.
Oh yes, it's like crazy levels of in depth.
This is what I'm hoping like retirement looks like for us, is just go back and play like all the games through history when we have no responsibilities. We've just like we'll be there on our state pension, just chipping away at these old games. We won't need anything modern because we'll be playing on such old tech it can run on a potato. Yeah, and we'll just or we'll have that bad like problems with our bones and our fingers and our muscles. We won't be able to play anything, so we'll just have to lament the fact that we can't play for more than 10 minutes because our fingers ache or our backs hurt.
I mean, I don't know how much you follow kind of people doing playthroughs on YouTube or whatever, but I recently got sucked into a guy called Mojave D, and he's playing he's like a really kind of like a frontier American type of old 70s guy. And he's his son's gone to play Red Dead Redemption 2. Right. And like you see him like when
I might have seen a clip or two of this actually.
Yeah, he starts playing it and he's like this super stoic old man, and he's playing. He's like, "Oh, I don't understand video games. This is dumb." And at the end, when obviously the end happens, he just like you can see he's like holding back tears, and he just goes, "I'm just gonna go outside for a bit," and he just leaves.
Yeah,
that's the type of retirement I want.
Oh, absolutely. There's something amazing that I always think when I look at like my parents and uncles and stuff. I'm like, there's so much of your own hobbies that you would love to pieces in video games, but they're just like they're not into games. And it's like I was saying there about Risk. Like my uncle was in the army and he loves all his like war history and memorabilia. He still does volunteer stuff. He would love something like what you've just described. And my dad with all his enthusiastic stuff. It's like you would love so many games, but you just don't play games. And I'm like, you could sink hours into this, but hopefully we'll be able to like pass that down. Or again, I guess we all say we'll be still involved and current in tech and stuff, but it'll get beyond us one day. We'll be like, oh, you young whippersnappers and you
we'll be like
orb memory balls.
We'll be like my granddad trying to like work a DVD player. That's what it'll be like. But I mean, the equivalent of that, I don't know.
We'll get there one day. But it is what not this day, Rob.
Actually?
We'll get into it as part of the news because it has been, like you said, in the time that you've got, I've been doing a little bit of EA Sports FC, just going back to my FIFA career mode in between games. I was waiting for Hellblade actually, and then ironically enough, we'll get into it, but finished Hellblade. I just went straight back to FC24, so it's almost like brief pause, and we'll get into the reasoning behind that as part of our review with the news. If you haven't done so already, though, folks, don't forget to like, subscribe, ring that bell so you are kept in the loop with all the great content we do here on the channel, like this very show, which you can get early from becoming a member by clicking join from as little as 99p on the link in description below. You can get early access to this very show, some special first look videos, stickers and badges next to your name in our weekly chat live streams, which we do many of. This past week I actually did a first look at the aforementioned Senua's Saga Hellblade 2. Sometimes I get the name mixed up. It's like Hellblade, but it's almost like that's not seen as the name of the game. It's Senua's Sacrifice and Senua's Saga, and Hellblade's just this kind of cool attachment that doesn't really vibe with the actual game itself. Like Hellblade seems like such a more whimsical hack and slash type game. I would picture it.
Yeah, it's almost like an anthology title, isn't it? In some ways.
Like I would expect Hellblade to just be like a Devil May Cry proper just hack and slash, but no, it's a really serious, deep psychosis focused genre of game. But we'll get into that, as I said. A couple of things upcoming. There is a merchandise store sale happening imminently, so if you're after some GamerGuildTV swag, just click the link in the description, take it to the storefront and have a shop around. Get yourself a t-shirt or a cap for the summer so you stay cool out there. As we said, Richie will be back next week. He'll most likely be back with a stream this week, actually, because I am away on my holiday. Not going as far as Richie is in Rome, but I am away, so he'll probably do something maybe Zelda related. Keep an eye out for that one. And there is a special surprise up on the channel soon to do with myself, Rob, because you said you've been going back to old stuff. I was telling Richie last week, I actually got a PlayStation Vita TV, which Richie didn't have a clue it even existed.
Yeah, how the hell do you track one of them?
Well, yeah,
there can't be many of them around.
I mean, not for a cheap price, that's for sure. But yeah, I was showing it off last week. So this little boy here, PlayStation Vita TV, I've now this week since, after speaking to some wonderful folks now Discord for some ROM and emulator stuff, allegedly, just in case, you get this cool little card, which basically you put a micro SD card into, and that goes into what would be the cartridge slot of the Vita.
Okay.
And this is like 512 gig. And bear in mind, at the time, the PlayStation Duo memory cards that were so expensive only went up to like 32 gig. So essentially, thanks to the cheapness of technology coming down and alleged hackers, yeah, I'm going to get up to some stuff. And our members get early access to that sooner than the rest. So check that one out. But Rob, to get about what I've been playing, I need you to introduce us to the
graciously gathered GamerGuild Gazette, aka
the news. How does it feel saying that again after many, many weeks?
Oh, it's like putting on a very comfy pair of shoes.
Richie doesn't do it justice, if I'm honest. Just say it. It's one of
It's
them.
all in the breath that you take, and then
Every breath you take. Right, our news, as always, is brought to you by our wonderful guild heroes, those fantastic folks who do support the channel that extra bit further, all 50 plus of you. I've already went through the rigmarole, but thank you for the support. We do appreciate it. Right, Rob, first news story, it has to be, it's all the talk out there. Hellblade 2, Senua's Saga, is out. It's on Game Pass. It's probably going to come to PlayStation in the future, but for now it's exclusive to the Xbox platform. It's also available on Steam. I've played it, I've completed it, and I wanted to get into some of the earlier reviews. So before we get into mine in particular, let's have a look how it's faring out there in the wild. GameSpot gave it a 6 out of 10. Games Radar gave it a 5 out of 5. Game Informer gave it a 9 out of 10, and IGN gave it an 8 out of 10. So the general consensus seems to be 8 upwards.
yeah, positive to mixed, right?
Positive to mixed, and I feel like the mixed reviews or the low-end reviews, they have very good points to be made, which I think is bringing it down maybe a little bit harshly. But at the same time, depending on what you're looking for out of a game, it's also very merited. So for those who don't know, Hellblade 2, it's the sequel to, we mentioned it earlier on, Hellblade 1, Senua's Sacrifice, which was made by Ninja Theory, released on PlayStation, Xbox PC, back in 2017. So it's been a good 7-odd years since we had the first iteration. Since that game came out, Xbox actually acquired Ninja Theory, brought it in first-party studios, and they've let them toil away on a sequel. It is already greenlit for a third entry in the series, and they are working on another project at the same time. So this isn't the end of Senua's Saga, ironically. And yeah, it came out this past Tuesday. There's a first look up on the channel, as I said, using cloud gaming, so it's a bit of a different take than most websites are doing. Everyone here knows our history in cloud gaming, so I thought, why not jump in and showcase it on that one. It's retailing at £50 instead of the usual $70, so it's a little bit cheaper, and it didn't get a physical release. So there was a couple of like little intricacies to do with the launch of this game to start with, and then me and Richie have been covering it for a few weeks now, but the marketing for this game has been very low ebb as far as people are concerned. Xbox only really put out a tweet or two and a couple of interviews and magazine covers, as you would expect in the games industry, but overall it doesn't feel like there's been a massive surge of marketing, which you would expect leading up to an Xbox first party release. So before I get into it, I'll read a couple of the descriptions from the reviews. We'll go with the top one. Games Radar, I give it 5 out of 5. Haunting, confrontational, and deeply cathartic all at once, Senua's Saga Hellblade 2 is a stunning feat of video game art. Ninja Theory doesn't tiptoe around its heavy themes, but welcomes them with well-honed empathy, tempered by an even keener creative edge this time around, to deliver an unforgettable narrative adventure experience that's hard to watch, yet even harder to turn away from. 5 out of 5. Smashed it.
Glowing, yeah.
Absolutely. IGN give it an 8 out of 10. Senua's Saga Hellblade 2 is another Viking-worthy feast for the senses that meets the high bar set by its predecessor, even if it never really manages to clear it. So, 8 out of 10. And I'll give you one of the bad ones. Metro UK. Classic video game heritage there. 5 out of 10. A joyless slog of barely interactive entertainment and a muddled portrayal of mental illness that just so happens to have the best graphics ever on a video game console.
Bear in mind, for anybody who's listening outside of the UK, Metro is the free paper that they have to give away because people wouldn't buy it.
Yeah, you get it on the train. Or maybe go with a bit of GameSpot then, because they gave a 6 out of 10, so a little bit closer. While few games can rival Hellblade's sound, graphic fidelity, and talent, I couldn't help think how gorgeous the game would be if its depiction was more varied. There are a few memorable set pieces I won't spoil, but even compared to its predecessor, which led players through tombs, raised towns, haunted woods, chambered halls, and let them face off against giants, there is surprisingly little variation in Hellblade's 2 settings and monsters. So, mixed bag, highs to lows. As I said, I finished the game, so I want to get the pros out the way first. So, did you play the first one, by the way? Senua's Sacrifice?
Yeah, I played the first one.
I've played it. So me and Richie have as well. So again, you'll remember what it was. It's Senua's story. It's all about her struggle with psychosis, the voices in her head, but with like a very Norse mythology twist in it. She goes and seeks out Hela for basically to redeem and find, I think it was a partner at the time. I think he was killed, and she took his head back to hell to save his soul or something and redeem it back.
Yeah, like a
she fought like Surtur and another boss on the way, but again, it is very like visually amazing, sound design amazing, and quite short a game. I think the first one was maybe 7 to 8 hours, if I recall, give or take. So then this one, going straight into Game Pass. For me, echo some of the thoughts on there. Visually, this is hands down probably the best game I've ever played from a visual standpoint. Like Unreal Engine 5 sings. Like some of the vistas and the landscapes and the lighting is just like chef's kiss. It blows you away. There's a few times I stopped and it just looks photoreal. Like the stuff you're looking at is like unbelievable. In the chat on the live stream on Thursday, actually, Shalvar, one of our members, who's from Iceland, was basically saying like they took a production team out there and shot loads of stuff to like then kind of map into the game, and you can tell. Like some of the views and the vistas are just like amazing. But then on the flip side of those amazing views is the game doesn't really give you any freedom of exploration to go and see them. So you are very much still like the first game down a linear pathway. And a lot of the time I wanted to just like pull away from the guided path and go and explore. And the game at no point lets you do that. So it was kind of like, there's this visual feast over there. And I just can't quite...
It's very much like a curtain backdrop almost.
Yeah, I can't get over this like mound of rocks, or I can't get past this layer of foliage, and I think like that's probably the limitations of, I guess, the engine and development time. But I was like, I would almost like take a hit on the visuals to just be able to go explore it a bit more, because that's part of video games, right? It's escapism, and that's what we love. But what I always told with while I was playing this game was just the pull between the developers clearly want to create an experience and not just a traditional video game. So that brings me on to like my second point, which is the sound design was phenomenal. Again, it was great in the first game. You hear the whispers in your head and everything going around, and the evil guy who I kept saying, I think the whole time I kept thinking it's just the voice of Sauron from the extended Lord of the Rings editions. He's like the shadow and I think it's a father from the first game, and he's just like, our Lord Sauron bids thee welcome. It was just that voice in your head the whole time, but he's going Senua. I won't get into voice acting here, but yeah, like that just, again, as good as the first game, if not ramped up even better. So the sound design, it'll win loads of awards for visuals and sound design come the end of the year, like hands down, unless something comes out to like correct it. I don't see how it's going to get beat. Yeah. I mean, there's nothing like, you've got 2 Ubisoft titles, Call of Duty. I don't think anything's going to push the boundaries of fidelity and ray tracing and lighting like this one does. There's some beautiful moments where it almost uses like bioluminescence in caves to track your way, and it's just, it's stunning. It's like you're in an absolute fever dream playing it. So if anyone's not checked it out, it's worth it just for some of these moments. Story wise, really enjoyed it, but then again, back to some of the negative points, just the length. Realistically, like I clocked in 5 hours 20, finished. And this game's been in development for 7 years. I mean, it was free on Game Pass.
Yeah, true.
So in terms of like value for money, like it's free for me, it felt like. But more in just terms of like the time I spent with the characters, the time, as I mentioned, I spent in the world. I felt like once I was like 3 and a bit hours in, like at the halfway point, it already felt like it was making its way maybe towards the end, and I'm wanting for more, which I guess is a credit to the game.
Yeah.
But then at the same time, now I have to wait, another 6-7 years to get more of it?
Yeah,
it just
I guess
felt
that's the
like
problem, isn't it?
It's almost like too much of a good thing in such a small space of time. I think that's the problem, is it could have been, I would have happily have it double the length. So yeah, like I enjoyed the story, but my worry now is like I just have to forget about it for another half a decade.
Yeah, I mean, this feels like a title that if Game Pass didn't exist, it couldn't really work.
I mean, if there was still an independent studio, it would probably sell enough numbers to make them, they'll win loads of awards, they'll probably make a good profit. But I think because it's now owned by Microsoft and it's in Game Pass, this is where we have to start like asking like, what is the return on investment for Microsoft here? Is it going to move Game Pass subs? probably not. And by the lack of marketing, would suggest they don't seem to back it either.
Yeah, it feels like there wasn't I don't know if it's maybe just Microsoft have obviously had a string of bad hits when it's come to first party like titles. I don't know, maybe if they're just losing a bit of their kind of confidence to really put a game out there. I mean, we saw like they did that with Starfield, and then Starfield disappeared in like a month, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you caught the news the other week, but they closed a few studios.
Yeah, again.
Like Hi-Fi Rush last year won loads of awards, different, and they shut Tango Gameworks down last week, only to then open a new studio within Activision the same like the following week. So it's like they're just a bit at a loss for what to do. And I do worry for Ninja Theory that they put out a stellar game, but has it done enough to move the needle? And that's no disservice to the actual quality of the game, because I had a great time with it. Mm-hmm. It just, back to my downsides to it, is I kept thinking I want more gameplay. So like the combat from the first game, it's the same combat, if not easier. I didn't think it was the enemy variety just wasn't there. They do a really good job throughout the enemy variety of when you're fighting them. When you kill one, it goes into like a little mini cutscene that then phases into the next enemy attacking you. So it all feels very cinematic, and you can move from enemy to enemy to enemy. Like you'll kill one, and then someone will bump into you, so the camera will whip round, and then the second enemy is like put in front of you. So you're always dynamically moving between them, which was great. But then it never felt like much of a chore. And then as I was exploring around, I kept thinking like, this is kind of where I want like upgrade my weapons a little bit when I'm exploring the little linear villages and pockets of the world that you do get to explore. I'm kind of wanting to like pick up trinkets and artifacts and like examine the beautiful environment a bit more, and it doesn't happen. There's nothing to look at. I think there's one moment where there's like a dead cow or something in a barn, and that's it. That's all it is. You go like, oh, that looks gross, and then you move on. And I just think because the devs wanted to do this experience, I kept having to remind myself they clearly have this goal in mind of like creating a cinematic masterpiece. But this is what it's boiled down to. Is it very much felt like an experience for 5 hours rather than playing a game. And I think
this it reminds me a little bit of, do you remember Heavy Rain on the PlayStation 3, I think it was?
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of like the reviews that started coming out for that game, because I remember when that dropped, obviously some people loved it as a storytelling experience with some elements of interactivity, but then other people said it just completely fell down as a game in its own right. And I feel like Hellblade 2 is kind of in that bad middle ground, between not being a full game that people maybe expect, but then having the price tag of what could be an interactive movie in some regards, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like if you played this on easy mode, and other than like bashing hit and block occasionally, you wouldn't have to do much to get through the whole game. Yeah. Which I think as a sequel, I always think like you have to try and innovate a little bit on the predecessor. And I think one of the reviews did say like it doesn't do much that the first game doesn't. And it's right, it doesn't. It looks better, it sounds better, but it doesn't actually like elevate any gameplay mechanics. And I think this goes back to them trying to keep it cinematic. So there's no HUD. Like I said, your weapons don't upgrade. There's no skill tree. So Senua's not learning anything new. It's the same moves from the first game. Heavy attack, light attack, block, and your special. Which kind of gives it like a bit of an overpowered edge over some difficult enemies. And yeah, I just kept finding my way going through, going, I really wish there was like something more. You meet a few really interesting characters, and then I think as the story was get going, it felt a little bit like Shadow of the Colossus. Everyone knows from the trailers like there's giants in this game, and I felt like it was building towards something, and then it was just like, this is the end of this beautiful moment. I was like, I feel like they could have had a good 3 or 4 more beats in this story. That would have just like not padded it out, but made the experience feel a little bit longer, maybe, and like let me live in that world. Because Senua, the cast of characters around her, like they're all great in their own right. They all have dynamic involvement with each other. They're brilliantly mocapped and voice acted, as you can imagine. But just like the credits rolled, and I was like, that was cool.
Yeah,
but I wanted it. I wanted more.
I mean, is this maybe like a reality check for gamers in the industry to say that people want like this next step of quality and of graphic fidelity and of all like the kind of the shiny bits? And is it almost a case of like, if you want this truly next gen graphics experience, which I think is fair to say this is, the cost of doing that has to come from somewhere, and in lots of regards, it will be like the depth of the game. Yeah. I think that's a fair point, because obviously, as we know, like game development has got infinitely more complex, even in the past decade, and games have built. Like if we go back to when like the original kind of N64 and games of that generation, I can't remember games being as long as they were. As they are now, right? So
no.
I feel like something has to give. Like, fair enough, the market's increased, but I don't know. I get the impression that there's like a disconnect between what it takes to hit next gen levels of quality and the depth we expect from a game potentially.
Yeah, I think expectations with this one in particular have been over exaggerated because it's been brought into the Xbox party. So now it's first party, everyone's expecting these big AAA blockbusters, and I think because it comes with the graphic fidelity of a AAA blockbuster, people expect that to back it up with the length. So like if you look at the other blockbusters coming out this year, Assassin's Creed is going to be like 100 plus hours, Star Wars Outlaws, 100 plus hours, Call of Duty, 10-hour campaign, maybe less, but then the multiplayer, which will take it beyond that. And then like everything else in between, like Rise of the Ronin that's just came out, it's like 40 odd hours. Even probably the Elden Ring DLC, which comes out next month, it's probably going to be 30 plus hours worth of content. So when you're looking at a value proposition, it is difficult for gamers maybe to get out of that mindset of actually value per like minute per pound isn't how you should review this. And even in the GameSpot review, they say like too much focus on cinematics and too little on creating an experience that is engaging. I think that's the biggest thing. There's a couple of times in this playthrough for me when like you basically play the whole game with the L1 button pressed in for it to run, because the rest it is just a slow walk, and then even the run is like just a light jog. And I'm wanting to, like, when she climbs down off rocks, it's like the slowest climb down ever. And there is part of you which I think just, you know what we're like in today's world, we're like we want everything now. It's YouTube Shorts, it's TikTok videos, it's 20-second worth of engagement, or you're bored. That's seeping into the reality of like games. If I'm just stood walking in a direction, trees look gorgeous, sunset looks amazing, all the characters beautiful, but what is it doing to stimulate my brain? And it's not doing much, which is the harsh reality of, I guess, making an experience over a game. Like there's something to be said about unlimited sprint and collecting items without even picking them up. Like how many games drop the collection animation now because it just pang, it's in your inventory.
Yeah.
Because people just want that like quick experience to make it
and
engaging.
Also, it's not particularly stream worthy either.
No.
Like a lot of success for games now is determined by like the audience that streamers can build around them, because it's almost like a self-perpetuating thing. And a title like Hellblade 2 just isn't friendly. I mean, first of all, like it probably sorts a streamer out for one day in terms of content, and that's it.
Yeah,
that's
just one long stream. It does beg the question. 5 hours, 20 minutes to complete. Full gameplay walkthroughs on YouTube. The top two, 103,000 views, 81,000 views, 511,000 views for part one. And you do wonder, like, how many people are just going to go, well, if it's cinematic, I'll just watch it like a 5-hour movie.
Yeah, I've got the experience.
And, like, that, if it was money on the table, if that was £50 a copy, like, Game Pass kind of doesn't prove that point too much. But I could probably say you could watch this and get virtually 90% the same experience.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're not going to get a surround sound, but...
Yeah. That probably ties into the fact that Microsoft didn't put any promotion cash behind it, because they must have looked at it and thought, we're not expecting anybody to actually buy this game. We're expecting Game Pass players to play it. So in that case, like, why would you put a big promo budget behind it?
Well, that's the Game Pass problem through and through, isn't it? Like, we don't know where the budget's saved. Like, they might have locked that in at the beginning of the financial year. They've got Indiana Jones to promote. They've probably got a Disney deal that says you need to promote X amount as part of the partnership. You got Call of Duty now in your wheelhouse to promote come the summer. That's going to be a whole thing. There's a rumour it's Gears of War 6. That's going to get a big chunky budget. So with all these financial constraints and Microsoft already doing layoffs and closing studios, this game, coming out going like, well, people in Game Pass are going to play it anyway because they get the Game Pass updates. They're going to be aware. Gamers know about it. But yeah, is it going to go under the radar? So what I would do in summary is 100% play it. Like, it's a worthwhile experience. But for me, that's what it is. It's an experience more than it is a game. And for a sequel, I was looking for more game in there personally. I enjoyed it. I would look forward to a third entry. I would quite happily go back and play this again in the future, and probably the first one I would as well. But it was so short-lived, I've went immediately back to FIFA FC24, and I'm chipping away at my career campaign, and it's almost like it was gone in such a flash. Like, how much is it going to resonate?
Like, I have to leave an impression as well.
Yeah, like, I'll remember it for, like, the visuals and the sound, but, like, will it have lasting power because I spent such short time in that world? It's almost like I'm on a cruise, and I've had, like, a day trip into a beautiful location, met some wonderful characters, have some stories to take home, but then, realistically, I'm probably going to talk about the rest of the cruise more, rather than this one day I had in Santorini or wherever I was at. But I do digress. I'm curious to get Richie's thoughts, because he'll no doubt probably finish it by the time the next episode rolls around, with it being so short. I do want to know our audience's views, because there's a lot of people in our Discord server who've also jumped in and probably finished it by the time this show goes live. So let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below on Senua Saga Hellblade 2 or Hellblade 2 Senua Saga, whatever you want to paint the picture as. And no doubt when it gets to the end of the year, it probably will win loads of awards, and rightly so. But it's just a shame it didn't have longer with us. Moving on, actually, before we do move on, briefly, I saw there was some news around its performance on Steam. Naturally, people getting very negative about it, but we won't need to dig into it because it's on Game Pass. So Steam numbers for me don't really sing a true picture, because surely if you've got Game Pass, that negates probably millions of players, because why would you buy it when it's free on Game Pass?
Yeah, it doesn't feel like a game that was intended for people to buy.
No, and to be fair, I think the website Tech for Gamers that's trying to push the narrative of it's bad on Game Pass. The initial article actually spells Hellblade Hellbalde, so they can't even spell Hellblade in it. So I wouldn't read too much into it, but yeah, its peak concurrent viewers was like less than 4,000, which it's a single player game, it's not multiplayer. It's also on Game Pass, so I wouldn't look into it. But if we're going to compare it to anything, Helldivers is still pushing out over 100,000 a day. So, but
that's the thing. If it only takes 5 hours to complete, then the overlap isn't there as an opportunity.
It's not at all. It's not at all. One thing I do want to move on to, though, is the second game that released this week. We covered it last week because it got a stealth full launch. Was XDefiant, formerly Tom Clancy's XDefiant from Ubisoft. Seen a couple of people playing this, but weirdly enough, the critic reviews, there doesn't seem to be many reviews out for it. It's almost like, I think, because it's multiplayer online only, all these websites are kind of holding off on giving it a definitive score just yet. There's only really Push Square, who are quite reliable at the PlayStation website. They've given it a 7 out of 10, saying XDefiant is a solid shooter that will likely scratch that arcadey itch with a snappy gunplay, iconic map design, and a fan-favourite game mode. It's the perfect multiplayer shooter to chuck on at a weekend, and we suspect several late-night sessions for old-school Call of Duty fans. It's not quite the breath of fresh air genre that the finals is, but it's more of a blast from the past. Is it a COD killer? No. But if Ubisoft can work its magic and go hell for leather with its multi-franchise post-launch content, XDefiant could flourish into a regular staple shooter genre. A couple of other reviews have given it 7 out of 10s, 8 out of 10s, but all the big boys, your IGNs, your GameSpots, Eurogamers, seem to just be quiet on the XDefiant front. So we're in a weird place with some games now, because they're releasing out beta, then testers, and then open betas. I think Ubisoft do about 20 different beta styles. I played XDefiant last summer as part of a closed beta, thinking it was going to come out last summer, and then it went radio silent, and then all of a sudden it's out now.
See, this completely I missed this game completely, to be honest. It just seemed to be it just seemed to exist one day, and I do love the Metacritic really kind of gives you the nature of the internet in lots of ways, where it's the review is average, and you've got 46 positive reviews, 13% mixed, and then 41 negative. So you've got this game's a Call of Duty killer on one side, and then you've got one of the worst experiences of my life.
Yeah, it very much is. And you know what? I'd take them all with a pinch of salt, because I guarantee a lot of them negative reviews are because they cancelled The Division Heartland last week as well. Yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of them are just going to the nearest Ubisoft thing just to piss on the parade.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's The Guardian, I found one from The Guardian, they give it a 4 out of 5. Saying, you may feel a touch of deja vu as you mow down villains with your M16, but although it's unoriginal, this free 6-person shooter is slick and enjoyable. So, again, what we've heard from XDefiant last year during the closed beta was that it feels very Call of Duty, very arcadey, and just like old school multiplayer fun. Mm-hmm. And it's no surprise then maybe that Ubisoft were quite happy to cancel The Division Heartland, 3 years in development, write it off, another big franchise, but stick with XDefiant. So there's clearly something here that either the beta testers are seeing or Ubisoft see, where they're like, no, we're going to commit to this one out of the few that they had going. Because they cancelled it. Remember 2 years ago they had Hyperscape? That launched, was active for like 3 months, and then they just absolutely shit the bed on it and shut servers down within weeks of launch. And it's like, to do that for a game that probably cost them hundreds of millions is baffling. But XDefiant survives. So,
I mean, I think we've talked about in the past where this format of game is ripe for a new competitor to come in, because let's be honest, it's got stale, especially the Call of Duty format.
Yeah.
So having obviously Battlefront or Battlefield isn't going to be a viable competitor anytime soon. So there is a need for a second version of this. Yeah. It's
in a world where you've got like Apex doing great things. The finals, we've got obviously Destiny team Bungie's got Marathon presumably coming out maybe next year, the year after. You've got Concord from PlayStation coming out. Don't know what that looks like. We only just got a light trailer. The finals is like the big one. There's why do I always forget the damn man? The one from the Haven team who was previously Stadia. It's got a $sign at the end of it, and I always forget it. Paydays, something. It'll come back to me. But it again, another thing that we don't really know anything about.
Yeah.
From Haven Studios, but it's again shooters because they're trying to capitalize on this like Call of Duty, and as you said, the void left by Battlefield shit in the bed a few years ago with 2042, which just got its 7th season, believe it or not. Not that you would know.
Fair play for them committing to it, but
they have to, right? I think there's definitely a gap in the market. No Killzone from PlayStation. There isn't many people doing the shooter, and I'm very curious to see what the world looks like now Xbox own Call of Duty. Could you imagine if this is the first Call of Duty under their stewardship, and it's the first one after like over a decade of being number one? It shits the bed. Somehow,
honestly,
that will be the
point,
ultimate.
Microsoft just need to be like, okay, well, we tried, we're done.
We'll go in and publish. We'll do a Sega. We'll just do a Sega.
Yeah.
But actually, this morning, I don't know if you saw it, the Black Ops, Call of Duty Redacted, which is their second part of the showcase this summer. Marketing's already began for it, so I know we just lamented Hellblade marketing. It's officially Black Ops 6, because I saw the Facebook page updated their cover photo to Black Ops 6. There's marketing for like Monster Energy drinks and Walker's Crisps out there already. So they've gone from having this cool like, it's redacted, we'll reveal all in the middle of June, to fuck it, it's everywhere now. We've released.
You've got to throw your chips in, right?
Yeah, so Black Ops 6, 6th entry in the Black Ops spin-off of Call of Duty. It's mad to think there's that many Call of Duty games, but I guess when you put out one every year, it's going to get up there.
Yeah, you have to just kind of run through the cycle, don't you?
I know I asked Richie last week, at the Xbox Showcase this year, do you expect to see some Call of Duty back catalogue going to Game Pass? Do you think now is the time to make that move before the next iteration?
I think I think it has to be. Like they've said this year, haven't they?
Yeah.
I think that would be a good boon. There must be some back catalogue coming.
And maybe XDefiant will fight them on the front. We'll probably do a live stream of it actually here, maybe when I'm back and Richie's back as well, because like I said, it is free, and we'll jump in with a wonderful community out there and pop some heads, click some guns. Moving on though, Rob, to the next story of the week, which is one that put a smile on my face when I saw it earlier on today. Astro Bot, the PlayStation exclusive title, which launched. Everyone who's got a PlayStation 5, including you, Rob, owns this game. Did you check out Astro Bot's Playroom when you pick up your PS5?
I can't say I did. So I picked up a PlayStation 5. I can't remember what game it was now, but there was a certain game I wanted to play, and I held off getting a PlayStation 5 for quite a long time. I think it was Ghost of Tsushima I wanted to play, and I tried the PlayStation Plus streaming version, which is
awful.
I
remember that.
But no, as soon as I got it, obviously I skipped that period where it didn't really have any a depth of library, so I just went straight into the full back catalogue, and Astro Bot got firmly.
This is one I would highly recommend. If you have maybe just a couple of hours and you're looking for something whimsical and fun, this is essentially like Mario 64 but modernised. where it is like beautiful, colourful open worlds. But the reason it's free for every PlayStation user, you do own it. It's if you go into the games, anyone who has a PS5 has this game. Download it for free. It might even be built in the console. It might actually still be there on your console without you even realising it.
It was there on launch.
But yeah, beautifully realised world. You're inside the PlayStation. That's the concept of the game. You are going in, and each different area of the levels that you explore is an element of the console. So there's like a CPU plaza, the cooling fan springs, and it's just whimsical, like I said, Mario 64 energy, where it's bright and colourful, but it showcased the power of the DualSense controller amazingly. Like the triggers, the haptic feedback, the rumble, the sound coming out of it, everything. So much fun, and it went through a full heritage of PlayStation history. So much so that Sony closed the studios working on it and folded them all into one team. And the rumours this week out of Video Game Chronicle is a new Astro Bot game for PS5 could be announced within the next 2 weeks, according to famed leaker Bill Kuhn, who's very, very predominant with getting things right. Within the next 15 days, he says, amongst other information he's obtained, he said part of the game will be in a playable environment located in the heart of a desert. One of the new characters in the game will be a fennec fox in the form of a robot, sharing some familiarities with Astro. According to Bill Kuhn, the game will be released on PS5 as opposed to VR, like the previous full entry. The last release was the aforementioned Astro's Playroom, a fun little 3D platform that became preloaded on every PS5. I can't wait for this, whatever it looks like. I think as soon as I played that on the PS5, like me and the wife played it, and it was one of them where it's so whimsical, so fun. Anyone of any age can pick it up. I absolutely adore the PlayStation nostalgia in it, but I very much feel between that and the VR entry, Astro Bot is probably the nearest thing to a mascot PlayStation have had since Crash Bandicoot. For me. Agree. And the studio have been toiling on it for nearly 5 years now, since the PS5 came out, so they've had a good bit of time to do something, and a fully fledged Astro Bot platformer game, because we ain't getting an Act 3. I'll be honest. We ain't getting an Act 3. We had Ratchet and Clank a couple of years back, so we're probably not going to get that. I'd love to see Sly Cooper return in some kind of like raccoon adventure, but seemingly that's not going to happen either. Sucker Punch are busy on Ghost of Tsushima 2, so we're probably not going to see them go back to the well in terms of the raccoon, the famed raccoon there. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. And Astro, it's one of them where I think I don't really play platformers anymore, but for some reason this is like, because of the PlayStation nostalgia they did with the launch game, that's got me in, and now I'm like, yeah, you know what? 7-8 hour game, colourful, whimsical worlds, playing around with the DualSense. I'm there for it, and it kind of does just lend the credence to there's got to be a PlayStation showcase imminent. Like there's been a lot of rumours it's coming this week, maybe next week. Guarantee you, I go on holiday next week, and bang, next Thursday.
100%, yeah.
PlayStation showcase, of course.
Do you feel like this feels like a natural way to tie in like the PlayStation Pro release, doesn't it? I feel like Astro Bots came with like each like a hardware.
Yeah, launch with VR, launch with the PS5. Yeah, that could be a good shout. PS Pro coming this Christmas with a new Astro Bot game.
Yeah, and that really kind of solidifies it as a mascot, right?
Yeah, I mean, if everybody who owns the console has it, that's your pack-in Mario game equivalent, isn't it? If you pack it in, it's there. I mean, I would actively pay for it. I don't think it merits a full game title. Funnily, like Hellblade, probably $49.99, like a little Big Planet kind of style title. But the element they mentioned about the Fox character, I think that's a play for couch co-op. I don't think they would introduce like this random other robot character. My guess is it's going to be like orange, have fox ears or something like that. It's got that little cute whimsical nature, so you can play on the couch with your son, your daughter, your brother, your sister, or your loved ones, and just make a play for two dual sensors. Can they do some magic with two dual sensors side by side? Maybe some like Game Boy link cable fun. Who knows?
Essentially Tails, isn't it? Tails from the Sonic games. That's the best way to describe it. It's an
actual fox as well, so that's the perfect tie-in. Yeah. Put the controller down and let your little brother just do nothing. Absolutely. Moving
Did you
on.
Ever get that thing just before you go on? Like, you know, like when you played, like you give like your unfortunate sibling like the second controller to control Tails, and like no matter what they did, like as soon as you moved, you just went off screen, and that was the fate of Tails.
Left behind. Yeah. My brother knows that pain so much. He's what, 3-4 years younger than me, and yeah, that was his life growing up. All the nostalgia that I gush on this show, that was him. Half the time not even plugged in, but we wouldn't even know. I actually sent literally an hour before we went to recording a TikTok or a YouTube short of Lord of the Rings: The Return of the King, saying when you were playing this on the weekend with your little brother, and you were always Gimli or Faramir, and it was like, that's who you played as. That's what my brother played as. You were grinding as Gimli while I was playing as Aragorn, Legolas, and Gandalf, doing all the best
on
stuff.
These shit characters.
Yeah, you grind for Faramir and Frodo and Sam for me while I do the main stuff with the good guys. So yeah, it's true. One game we never played though when we were younger was any of the Total War series. I feel like they were on our radar, but for some reason we were always playing something else in the tactical strategy games. This is probably more in your wheelhouse then, Rob. The rumours are Creative Assembly are working on 3 games. They've got 3 titles in the works. No doubt probably a new entry in the Total War series. Probably another Warhammer title, because they seem to be really big on those at the moment. But the rumour is they're working on a licensed Star Wars game. So this is from Dual Shockers, who credit a reliable source. Dual Shockers are quite a good site for this kind of thing as well. What does it look like? I mean, they've got no information on it, but Total War, Star Wars, it seems to be like a perfect fit for something a little bit different.
It does. I have many thoughts about this. So, like, I'm a big Total War fan. Like, I think the first one I played was Medieval 2, and like I almost killed my poor laptop trying to get that thing to run smoothly. It was not a happy bunny. In the past couple of years, they've made some like big missteps as a company. So if anybody who doesn't know, essentially what you have is like the historical arm of Total War, which is like medieval Rome.
Three Kingdoms,
yeah, which is like again kind of, I think the latest one was Pharaoh, which didn't go down too well. So you have like that tract of games, which has been their kind of bread and butter since they started doing the series. And then you also have like the Warhammer part of the franchise, and like that really like was the thing that like saved Warhammer Fantasy, because like me and you used to be like kind of into it when we were kids, but they actually shut down like the entire fantasy side of Warhammer because it wasn't performing very well, and this game kind of revived it in lots of ways. So it's been hugely successful. So what they've had so far is like Warhammer 1, 2, and 3, like fantasy. And like the big rumour is that there's like a 40k version of the game, which is like Games Workshop's most popular franchise. So yeah, there's definitely going to be a Warhammer title. There'll be a historical one just because there always is. The fans are like clamouring for like a Medieval 3 or a Rome 3, because those are the two most popular. And then there's like space for a third one, and like the Star Wars universe would work really well. The trouble with my only reticence in it is how they'll deal with the factions, because typically Total War likes to have kind of 8 factions which are kind of interacting with each other, and I guess with Star Wars you'd have obviously Rebels.
It's in eras, isn't it, as well?
Yeah, so you'd have like Empire, you'd have Rebels, like space pirates, like kind of, nerd herder type of people. So it'd be curious to see how like they expand that out. I mean, I guess you could have like different factions in the Empire, like the First Order or whatever. But no, I'm really up for it. It'd be interesting to see how they handle the flying combat and like that type of stuff. But no, like the universe would work really well, and like
it's one of them franchises. Like just looking through the list of everything they've done. Last year they had Total War Pharaoh, which I think was received mixed reviews, even though like applying it to again ancient Egypt, you think would be like right in that wheelhouse. But I think any massive franchise attaching it to Total War makes sense. I think just talking about Lord of the Rings before, that seemingly would make sense if you took Game of Thrones and applied it to Total War. Like anything with like
full
mass
mods
battles
out there which make the game like
I can fully
so.
imagine.
Yeah.
I didn't realise it was the same team that did Alien Isolation. Just randomly in 2014, they took a few years out, made an amazing horror first-person game, and then just went back to Total War.
Yeah, like historically, they have been a really good studio, and like I think they've struggled with like I guess their approach to monetization has turned a lot of people off.
Yeah, well, I saw a review. I saw an article this week that was saying a survey done over the last couple of years shows that deep strategy games, they've actually had a 67% reduction in interest.
Yeah.
Which is like like I can kind of see it, because I think when we were growing up, like RTSs and strategy games were like all the rage, and then they just fell off a cliff in like the mid 2000s onwards. And then I feel like they've had a little bit of resurgence recently with like the Age of Empires remake and then a couple of other things, but it's almost like they've hit saturation point again, where there is only because you sink so many hours into them, you do only have limited time to play them. So
I think there's an issue with the way DLCs work in these types of games. So a couple of weeks back I tried to get into Stellaris, which is like another massive strategy game. And obviously it's on Game Pass, so I just fired it up. And when I started playing, obviously like you only get the base game in Game Pass.
Yeah.
So I was like starting my game, and there's like little prompts that say, "Oh, playing this race, like we recommend this DLC to enhance your experience," and these types of things. And I almost thought like, I almost don't want to play this now, because I feel like I'm not getting the full game or the intended experience out of it. So I think like when getting new players into like the likes of Total War, like I think it is a bit of a turn off to have essentially a lot of the game fragmented, which is what these games get to. They get to a point where they layer on DLCs and layer on new systems that the base game doesn't look like the full version of the game anymore. So I think that's like a real kind of issue and a real barrier to entry.
Yeah.
But yeah, like going back to like will Star Wars work? Like Total War has historically been like a melee combat type of game and system. So I'll be interested to see how they manage that, like with Star Wars. But if they're also doing a Warhammer 40k version, those two mechanics are probably going to be similar. So
there's a lot of crossover with just the futuristic elements, isn't there, that come into it?
Yeah.
I'm wondering how much they could take from, like, you remember Empire at War probably really fondly as well, like similar thing where you're kind of controlling more of it. But I just think, like you're saying there, inherently, like the Star Wars IP, with the monetization, the boosters and stuff, I feel like just the brand alone of Star Wars probably has that. What you would lose in DLC and expansion packs, you would probably gain in just every time some Star Wars content drops on Disney Plus or movie or whatever, you get that boon in interest that comes back to things like we've seen happen with The Witcher and stuff, with the game gets a spike every time. And I think that would happen for like a Star Wars Total War game, is every time content drops, everyone goes, "Oh, you know what? I've got that itch. Oh, there's a Total War Star Wars. I'll jump into that and play that."
It'd be really simple to do as well, because if you think of like even the TV shows, it's like, let's assume like the base game is just the movie plot.
Yeah.
If you add in, like, if you want to start doing DLC, you've got like a Mandalorian style faction.
Absolutely.
You've got that stupid Empire security force from Andor, which is like Empire but not Empire, like police.
Yeah.
Like you can keep layering on stuff like that, which would, like effectively give them a lot of content for years to come.
Yeah.
So I'd definitely play it.
Yeah, I think it's one. If the Total War game was going to pique my interest, I think it probably would be that, or Warhammer 40k. So I guess it depends on which one they're going to put out first. We've still got Space Marine 2 later on this year. Remember, I think September time. The long-awaited entry in that one. So
I feel like Warhammer 40k is going through like a bit of a renaissance as well. Like I get hooked into like a lot of content online about it, and it seems like obviously Henry Cavill's doing like a TV show.
Yeah, it's going to be huge.
It's going
to be huge.
Like,
I mean, his movies are all seemingly
huge.
flopping at the time. Yeah, physically and realistically. But yeah, interesting. So Total War Star Wars, if you're interested in that, if that ticks your galactic box, then let us know in the comments below. Moving on though to some outside of video game news, pivoting a little bit to a story that dropped this week. IGN, probably the biggest video game news journalist website on the planet, have set to acquire the UK publishing GamerNetwork, which operates websites that we very much source all the time, including GamesIndustry.biz, Eurogamer, Rock Paper Shotgun, and Video Games Chronicle 24/7, which I think most of our stories from this week's show have came from those websites. So it's very rare that I actually use IGN for no particular reason. Just I always find like the way the layout and the format of the other sites is just better for reading, I guess, in a way. IGN's garnered, because it's so huge, I think it garners towards the mainstream now, which is short videos, TikToks. The amount of content they put out now, which is just someone stood in front of a green screen, you know, that horrible thing where the footage is behind them and they're like stood on a bad green screen where you can clearly see like everything blurry and pixelating behind them, basically pointing up at words that say like, oh, this game launched in this year, look at it, and then it's just like lazy. It's social media content, yeah. It's social media for the clicks and the likes. But in terms of that, yeah, they've acquired pretty much all the other big players, which also, weirdly enough, the GameNetwork publishing branch also has shares in Digital Foundry and Nintendo Life. That then branch out into things like Push Square and a couple of other, basically every other site on the planet, basically by Kotaku, they seemingly have acquired. Immediately, layoffs followed the news imminently. So we've acquired all these other sites. And it's weird, in the aftermath of all the redundancies, I think the games industry is past the point of nearly 10,000 layoffs have happened in 2024 alone in this industry. And then IGN have just done the same thing. And where, after all that Xbox stuff with Activision Blizzard King acquisition, where does the monopoly rules lie with journalism, where they've essentially just scooped up all of the other competitor news websites to do with gaming, made some layoffs, and now IGN own them all, quite frankly.
This is a big issue in lots of different fields, really, where you have, obviously, like the mega publishers, like the real like big players on one side who have the resources to throw at anything they want to, and then on the other side you have like this big chasm of nothing now, and then you have like the small independent people who probably aren't making income from the work they're doing. They're doing it from some other, motivation or whatever, and those people don't have the resources to do, let's be fair, like kind of proper in-depth journalism. So like you're losing this like middle ground of people who could, maybe not be so beholden to like getting the stats up for advertising revenue, which is what IGN is. But like IGN doesn't sell news; it sells advertising. That's its game. So yeah, it's a really kind of sad thing, and it's not just happening with gaming; it's happening with lots of different like verticals and things like that. But I don't know. I just feel like no one's going to be doing the real kind of in-depth, like, actual journalism. They're going to be click farming, and it's a real shame. And I hope it doesn't happen to like games industry biz in particular. Like, they've done some really strong stuff over the years, but I just feel like there'll be no space for what they do in the IGN.
Yeah.
Business model.
It's curious to think how many maybe because like realistically they all do the same thing. So why would you have this many? I could see some of them being closed down. Because like essentially you've got like what? Lead writers, staff writers, editors, who now you've got multiples of them. Yeah. At what point do you just go, well, we only need one to look after the whole team, and the rest are just journalists within that team? I just hope, I do hope they keep their own identity, because I think there is something to be said about having different opinions but not governed by the same umbrella company. And like again, no disservice to IGN. Like I frequent like their podcast shows. I listen to Beyond the Unlocked Xbox and occasionally the Nintendo one as well. So like I'm very much familiar with a lot of the staff over at IGN, like on quite a relatable level, because I've listened to them for years now. The kind of funny guys, me and Richie too, originally all Podcast Beyond and IGN staff, and then now I listen to them as well. And Last Stand Media, I listened to all that. It was again former editor-in-chiefs over there. So it's like they've very much, everyone who used to work at IGN has proliferated out into the industry, but then now they've bought the rest of the industry and brought them back in-house almost. So
it's almost like that problem when like like you go to like you're looking for somewhere to eat and everyone loves pizza. You'll happily eat pizza.
Pizza today.
But, yeah, right. Like fantastic meal. Everyone loves it. But then occasionally you want a different flavour or a different experience, and you quickly learn that there's not many other options around town because everyone loves pizza so much and the other places have closed down type of thing. Yeah. So it's that type of thing, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, we don't really know much more about it, and I don't know how much effect it'll have on long term. But again, it's odd that there's I guess no governing body to step in and say. Yeah.
And you have to realise as well, like this is on a backdrop of like these like publishers survive by selling advertising space or selling subscriptions or whatever.
Yeah.
Like the revenue that can generate from written piece of the content is a hell of a lot lower now compared to videos and social reach and whatever. And you add on top of that the fact that when someone publishes something, there's 15 people getting ChatGPT to rewrite it and then still clicks away from it. Like, it's a shame, but a lot of these places just aren't viable anymore, and like you will lose something out of like the quality of content put out there.
Yeah, competition's healthy, right, for everyone, especially when it comes to journalism. You want multiple voices.
Yeah.
But either way, acquisitions. So IGN making moves. Speaking of making moves, next story of the week. Interesting enough, Nintendo have moved to acquire Shiver Entertainment from the ever-struggling Embracer Group. Now, this is probably weird for two reasons. There's one, it's Nintendo. They very rarely dip into their bank and fork out for acquisitions. And I guess secondly, to no surprise, it's Embracer selling off assets after their purchasing that went on recently. For those who don't know, Shiver Entertainment, you probably won't, they're one of the more support studios. Reading from Gamatsu, not owned by IGN, Nintendo have entered into agreement with the Embracer Group to acquire 100% of the outstanding shares of Miami-based developer Shiver Entertainment. They're a video game developer best known for the Nintendo Switch port of Hogwarts Legacy and Mortal Kombat 1 more recently. They're going to buy out all shares and subsidiaries as soon as possible. So I guess this is Nintendo, in my opinion, Rob, prepping for the launch of the Switch 2. You've got a studio here who's made successful in brackets, because Hogwarts Legacy was great. Mortal Kombat 1, not so much. That got criticised a lot. Yeah. But I feel like we made fun of it on the show, but I think that was more for just the power of the Switch couldn't keep up with it. I think this is Nintendo essentially upstaffing for the Switch 2, which inevitably, because it's going to be a more powerful console, I wouldn't be surprised if there's some PS5, Series X games that maybe just make the grade on the Switch 2 or the Switch Pro, whatever it's going to be. And I think Nintendo, right, to get these titles out, we need support studios to help crank those out. And if you've got a proven entity in Shiver, why not? But no surprise they're going for 100% as well. I think it would be very un-Nintendo to only acquire half or a percentage in a studio. It's all or nothing.
Yeah, like you mentioned at the start, like Nintendo are very, very tactical when it comes to acquiring studios. They don't just do it like kind of Sony and Microsoft do, where they just kind of throw cash around. Like when Nintendo acquires somebody, it's very much part of a bigger play as opposed to just trying to capture some IP or something. So yeah, it must be a tooling up for Switch 2 launch.
Yeah. Had you heard of Shiver beforehand? Because I hadn't.
Well, I obviously like Mortal Kombat. The name was attached to that, but
that was it.
That's as much as I know about them, to be honest.
Interesting.
Well, it's always interesting when you pull back the screen on the gaming industry, and you know these little studios exist, which their entire job is like a very normal office. Okay, we'll just pop in and we'll port this game this month, and then in a couple of months' time we'll do this. Yeah. It's nice little insight.
It's probably a more lucrative business to have. I mean, not maybe lucrative, but I guess reliable, because in the world we live in today, there's so many ports and remakes and nostalgias. I mean, Bluepoint, who did Demon's Souls, they did the Nathan Drake collection, then they did, I think, one of the Wipeout games, and then they did Demon's Souls, and then they were acquired by Sony, and now they're being given their own project from the ground up. So it's almost if you do a good enough job, you're almost like cut your teeth on a remake. And then, once you're staffed up and you've proved you can do it, it's like, right, well, go make your own thing now. So it's almost like an apprenticeship in game development.
It's like a relatively easy way to ramp on to being a studio on your own legs, because you don't have to bank on having an amazing creative idea, and then you can just kind of hone your technical skills, which is good for the industry, I think.
Yeah, and we've seen it makes money. Look at just all the remakes, all the Resident Evil ones recently, and to name a few. It's clearly where, in a world where tech's pushing itself forwards, but nostalgia is always so big. Mm-hmm. Just wait till we get more remakes of stuff that's already had remakes. I know we give shit, but The Last of Us has already had 3.
Yeah.
And it's only 10-year-old, so it's imagine in 20 years' time, 30 years' time, are we going to see another remake? Probably. Because it will still be an amazing story, and the video games that hold up so well now, it is only a matter of time, right, before people go can we get a better looking version of the original? And
yeah,
we'll probably get it. So either way, what we might not get is remakes of some old IntelliVision stuff, Rob, because another acquisition story for the back end of the show is Atari buys the IntelliVision brand, ending the longest running console war to date. It's a shame Richie's not on, because I think he had one of these. IntelliVision was the Amiga, right? The Amiga IntelliVision, is that right? I'll read from the article rather than guess. Atari has purchased IntelliVision brand, ending what Atari claims to be the longest running console war in history. Atari's home console went head to head with Mattel's IntelliVision in the late 70s and 80s, long before Nintendo and Sega even competed in the 90s. IntelliVision enlisted actor George Plimpton for an infamous series of adverts comparing the two consoles. Now Atari owns the rights to over 200 games from the IntelliVision portfolio and its trademarks. However, IntelliVision Entertainment will continue developing and distributing the Amico console under a brand new license, which Atari will distribute versions. Reading from the tweet, this was a very rare opportunity to unite former competitors and bring together fans of the golden age of gaming. I'm dying if anyone can't tell. Sorry, if audio listeners, if you caught that cough on the end there. Apparently talking all day at work and then doing a podcast for an hour and a half afterwards.
Yeah, who knew?
Not good on the old throat.
This kind of reminds me of, do you know, like when you see... Actually, no, the thing it reminds me of is Metal Gear Solid 4. Do you know, like when there's like two really old arch rivals like battling to the death on top of a submarine or something, and it's like the kind of orgies of gaming, just like battering each other to death, and Atari finally gets like the killing blow on the end.
Yeah,
like
age-old blow, but... I mean, they've acquired loads of games. Atari have had, I won't say a kind of a revival of late, but they had like the console. They've done a lot of reboots of the games. A lot of like, again, these games are very much pixelated updates. Like these aren't long games, they aren't huge games. They're probably better served as mobile games, but Atari have almost like stood the test of time, where they probably make more money on nostalgia than they did in their prime. Just selling like Atari T-shirts and caps that have the logo on, and even ironically in the tweet that they put out about the acquisition, they did a subtweet saying, "Oh, and here's the two T-shirts," and they've got IntelliVision T-shirts already out.
I saw that,
and it's one of them weird things that the T-shirt looks cool. To be fair, and an Atari T-shirt, I've looked at that many times and thought, yeah, because there's just something inherent about video game nostalgia that it chips into part of my brain, which is like, yeah, I'd wear that.
Yeah, no,
so,
I completely get that.
It's just a merchandising thing, and whatever these 200 games are, my guess is there's probably only 1% of them are actually any good. But repackage it, put it out, put it on to Game Pass or something, and it just churns money, right?
Yeah,
and we just talked about remakes and reboots. There's the 200 games there that could just add a little 21st century twist on them. And
there's some surprising stuff in the back catalogue for Atari as well when you dig into it.
Oh,
but I do have a bit of trivia, okay? And I'm not sure if I've actually dropped this on the podcast before, so this might go down terribly.
Okay.
Right? So, the founder of Atari also founded another much-loved, nostalgic brand. Do you know what it was?
Do I get a clue?
Is
it to do with video gaming, or is it like just something totally...
It was like a destination, like a family destination.
Butlins.
No. Chuck E. Cheese.
Oh, shit, really? Oh, I guess
yeah,
that makes
Chuck E.
sense.
Cheese chain.
If with arcade, because like going to the arcade was like part of that
yeah.
experience, wasn't it? Wow, Chuck E. Cheese.
So,
Did it still
well done
Chuck
to any
E.
readers who got that niche fact.
Do they still own them?
No, like the guy who did it, he was on like a entrepreneurs like podcast I listened to.
Ah, okay.
I think he's just happily retired on Atari dollar now, so good for him.
Why not? Just reading at the bottom there. They put out... Oh yeah, we know. Yeah, we covered it on the show that they bought the rights to Roller Coaster Tycoon 3 to bring all of those franchises in. Mm-hmm. They bought the rights to over 100 games 2 years ago, which included Bubsy and Demolition Racer. So not classic IP, but...
Not by any stretch.
IP, none, all the same. So moving on from acquisitions to openings of new things. A new story for the week coming from Video Games Chronicle, now owned by IGN, is Baldur's Gate 3 developer Larian opens its 7th studio in Warsaw, titled Larian Warsaw. It's growing its team for crucial development with 2 ambitious RPG projects now in development. So, of course, Baldur's Gate 3. Recently, the developer said that they're not going to be working on Baldur's Gate 4. They're going to be moving on to new projects. But here is a new studio in Poland, right off the back of last week's story of Activision opening a new AAA narrative-based studio in Warsaw as well. They now have some neighbours in Larian Studios Warsaw. So seemingly, Poland, the up-and-coming place for video game studios, probably down to the price. Me and Richie said last week.
It's got to be labour cost, right?
Absolutely labour cost, yeah. And as I go back to the article, with 2 very ambitious RPGs now starting development, what better way to see our vision fully realised than by growing teams and opening our 7th studio in the heart of Poland's lively gaming scene, they wrote on their official Twitter account. It now joins studios in Belgium, as well as Canada, Ireland, Malaysia, the UK and Spain to continue working on other titles. So, congratulations to Larian Poland. I did not know, I would not have guessed in a million years that he had 7 studios. I just thought it was
just a one team. Yeah.
Which I guess they've all just been working on Baldur's Gate for all these years.
From what I know, yeah. I mean,
kind of like Ubisoft, they just like all chip in.
Yeah, from what I can tell. I mean, fair play to them because they made a fantastic game. But I think, time's right for them to diversify into their own IP. So, yeah, good luck.
You know what I love is the logo for the new studio is similar to the other one. It's a guy in some kind of armor, but like a slightly different armor. So it's almost like each studio's, it's the same logo, but they have variations on the armor individual.
Each is like a knight of a round table or something.
That's quite a cool like brand unification. So it's still definitively Larian, but little tweaks here and there. Yeah, it is. That definitely plays into their RPG roots, doesn't it? Okay. So yeah, not much more to say on that. They're working on the new RPG. We'll probably have to wait 5 years to find out. But yeah, Poland, the place to be. So why not open a studio up in Romania instead, Rob? Next story follows on quickly. Amazon Studios have announced a new opening of a video game studio in Romania. That's right. Amazon Games team. They've currently got one in Orange County, US, Montreal, San Diego, and Seattle. This will be their 5th team, led by Christian Pana, a former director at Ubisoft Bucharest. He's got over 20 years' experience, and he's recently worked on Far Cry: The Division and Avatar. And he quotes, "I'm thrilled to be joining Amazon Games at a time when the team is actively building an exciting roadmap. I've built and led outstanding teams in the past, and I know this area of Europe is a hotspot for some of the very best gaming talent." Arguably just like Poland. Amazon Games will publish the next Tomb Raider game from Crystal Dynamics, which we covered last week. But yeah, a new studio for Amazon. I wonder if, Rob, these games are going to come to Amazon Luna, because this is the ongoing thing that the 2 titles they've put out as Amazon Games, in terms of publishing and their actual own title, New World, only came to PC. And we said, surely they'll come to Luna. Like, Amazon Luna is turns 3, I think, this year. And we've seen nothing. But here they are opening their 5th studio, which is only a good sign, right? Because we lamented Google Stadia for closing theirs down after 1 year. And then seemingly Amazon are committing more. This is their 5th studio, which is what we said Stadia didn't do, is build their own foundation of internal studios whilst making third-party and second-party deals. And is quiet and as slow as Amazon are seemingly doing this. They are publishing a new Tomb Raider game. Their platform does still exist, albeit in whatever status of cryogenic freezing it's in. But yeah, new studio.
I'm tired of trying to apply logic to anything that Amazon Game Studio does, to be honest. Do something great and then well done. But I'm not trying to second guess them at this point, to be honest.
No, it's a bit of an odd one, but who knows? So we don't know what they're working on. Again, you're probably talking 3-4 years to hear anything from it. But yeah, they've got to spend those millions and millions of tax-free money somewhere, right? Why not do it in Bucharest? Moving into the last final part of our show, just some quick news stories this week. Indie developer Devolver Digital have announced they're going to have a summer showcase as part of Summer Game Fest. No surprise there. They're marking it as Volvy's 15th birthday party. I don't know if you remember the original showcase at last year's event, Rob, but they had like the fake mascot Volvi, which was a mouse, and they made it out like it was original mascot from the early 90s, and then he'd evolved with different games, and it was very much a South Park tongue-in-cheek comedy at this mascot character. Okay. And then they had Bot, I think, which was a robot on stage with the presenters, and ended up flipping out like Five Nights at Freddy's style and killed everyone in the crowd and the audience. And Volvi was actually inside the robot was the brain of the original creator from back in the 80s or something. It was like, it was absolute hilarious comedy. Like as far as like a production goes for a video game announcements, it was so well done. It's definitely worthwhile checking out if you want like it was proper South Park comedy, I would describe it. So yeah, for their showcase this year, it's their mascot's 15th birthday. Even though the mascot was only created last year, it's apparently celebrating his 15th birthday as part of it. But yeah, Devolver Digital put out loads of little great little tiny titles. They pick some absolute gems when it comes to it. And I'm hoping there's an actual like Volvi game. So it's Devolver Digital is where they get it from, but if they just put out just like a really small platformer or something, because when they go through his history, they say like, oh, when he made the jump over to 3D mascots like Crash Bandicoot and everything that failed, and then he did Modern Fortnite, that failed, and it's just really, really fun stuff. But yeah, I love Devolver Digital. Put out some fantastic games. Moving away from games into movie games, there was an interesting one from Mad Max. I don't know how familiar you are with the Mad Max movies, Rob.
Oh yeah, I love them. Absolutely love them.
Because I've not seen any of the new ones, but then the latest one, Furiosa, is like apparently getting like 10 out of 10, amazing
Fury
scores
Road
results.
Was amazing. Like
so I'm like, ooh. Okay, but I did play the Mad Max game, the WB game that was put out by Avalanche, and I really, really enjoyed it. I went for the platinum, and the only thing that held me back on it was some of the races you had to do with the car. I think you had to win every race with like a set, and it was going to be that much of a grind. And I think I got halfway through, and I realised I was missing one or two collectibles or car parts or something, and it was almost like basically I had to restart the whole game again. And I thought after like 40 hours, I was like, nope, I'm not doing it. But I thoroughly enjoyed my time with it. I didn't expect it to be so good. It had like elements of Batman Arkham with like a bit more open world with a car to explore around. And
it was a really solidly done game. I think I got it on PlayStation Plus. It was one of the...
Was it Chum? Is the little Gollum guy who used to fix your car? He used to like hop on the bonnet and like do stuff while you were on fire.
It's been a long
smoke
time since I played it.
But yeah, the reason I wanted to bring it up is because the director George Miller is claiming the studio's game wasn't as good as he wanted it to be during a recent promotion for the movie. Someone asked him from Gaming Bible, like, whether he'd consider a new game to go alongside his like films, and he said the previous game wasn't as good as I wanted it to be, adding, "I'm one of those people that I'd rather not do something unless you can do it to the highest level." But then said he has a lot of love for Hideo Kojima and the challenge of a Mad Max game to do with the story. But yeah, I just wanted to come to the defense of the Mad Max game because it was brilliant and it was very underrated. And
I guess let's be practical here. He'll have been so far removed from the decisions that WB made on that game.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, if you have like him, like the studio that made the game, and then WB in the middle, like there's a giant chasm of information that just won't have got between those two parties, right? So yeah, like it was. I could see, obviously, like George Miller would want a very story-driven cinematic experience, which is, it just wasn't the game that they made. They made an open-world game, and to the credit, they made a very solid open-world game. I just don't think it would have been what he would have done with full creative control, which is fair enough.
Absolutely. Well, the former co-founder of Avalanche Games actually tweeted out about the response and said it's complete nonsense and just shows complete arrogance. The team at the time, did everything they could to make this a completely linear game after having signed up with the developer of open world games. He's sure Hideo Kojima would make an awesome Mad Max game, but it would be a completely different experience.
Fair play.
After the first year of development, they realised they had to force us to make a linear experience rather than an open world game that they originally pitched. We threw away a year's worth of work and got to hear that players want more autonomy in this day and age. Well, no shit. So he actually gives a bit of a peek behind the curtain to game development there. That's Christopher Sundberg, who's now at Liquid Sword Games. But that's like it's kind of the sign of the times, right? Is they wanted to make one game, and then the powers that be, especially at WB, they are like one of the worst. Like just look at Gotham Knights and Suicide Squad to show you what WB are up to.
If you need to know where the problem was in that like formula, then
Yeah. But for all intents and purposes, I loved what I played of Mad Max.
Yeah, me too.
If they happened to make a sequel, I would have bought it and would have played it. So it's just a shame. It was very unique. Even though the open world was like very empty, because you're in a car, it still felt fun. There was enough going on. Like random people would show up to attack you and other car creations, and you would have to pull over and look for fuel. Like fuel management was a big important part of it, I think, if I recall. And,
which again ties into the universe really well. And
yeah.
It's just a solid game. Yeah.
I enjoyed it. So George Miller, stick to movies. Unless you're going to get Kojima to make a game, then I'm all for it.
But also, yes, please, Hideo Kojima, make a Mad Max game, because that would be insane.
Could you imagine? And then the final news story of the week, heading into our Season 2 of The Last of Us, and hopefully the Clickercast when we get around to it, probably next year. The Last of Us Season 2 has cast Jeffrey Wright is the role of Isaac, which, to probably a lot of people's surprise, he played Isaac in the game, but it didn't look like Jeffrey Wright, but he was terrifically acted, more capped. But in it very, very shortly, if anyone remembers from The Last of Us Part 2, it was, albeit just a cameo for all intents and purposes, and to have such a great actor on the cast list, but only really utilise him for, he probably got, 10 minutes screen time, tops, in the whole game?
Agreed, yeah.
I think the TV show could utilise him massively.
Absolutely.
And I'm looking forward to seeing more of his side of the story and goings on with the WLF and his kind of little group of army soldiers he's got there, and his plans to attack the Scars on the island. I think there could be really, really good storytelling there. And Jeffrey Wright's phenomenal, so I'm glad to see that they've recast him in his old role, I guess.
I'm very happy you used the wording you did there when you said he didn't look like Jeffrey Wright. So do you know who else doesn't look like Jeffrey Wright in movies? Jeffrey Wright. Okay, so do you remember the Shaft movie with Samuel Jackson?
Samuel Jackson, yeah.
Yeah. Do you remember the gangster bad guy in that?
Is that Jeffrey Wright?
In all white.
Yeah.
That's Jeffrey Wright. I did not make that connection until I looked him up in this before doing the prep for the show. So Peoples Hernandez.
That's crazy. I was telling my wife about it, saying because loves The Last of Us, TV show and game as well. And I was like, and she knows Jeffrey Wright. I was like, they've cast Jeffrey Wright. She was like, who? I was like, Jeffrey Wright. It's like, who? I was like, he's Felix Leiter in the Casino Royale and No Time to Die, Daniel Craig Bond movie. She was like, he's in Hunger Games as well. He's the techie guy who does this stuff. Yeah, Westwell as well. He was one of the behind-the-scenes guys, wasn't he?
One of our friends shared a list of people who, a list of actors who you recognise in so many different productions, but you don't know the name of. And I feel like, he's unfairly...
He fits into that bracket a little bit.
Because he's a phenomenal actor. He really is.
He is. In his one scene in The Last of Us Part 2, it's not really spoilers, but he has a particular moment where he's eating an apple and speaking to Abby about she just wants to, I think, go out and look for Owen, I believe, in the game, and he's just he has a 2-minute monologue about survival and protecting his people whilst eating an apple, and it's such an intense, scary moment. Nothing really going on, just a human being eating an apple while explaining something, but it's such a greatly shot and directed piece. I can't wait for it. I think that's great, and I think after maybe some of the weakness of The Last of Us was probably maybe the villains in the middle of the series, I think he could go on to then be in maybe 2 and 3, and really, really interesting stuff. But Last of Us 2 seemingly shooting already. I don't know if you've seen the clips of Bella Ramsey with the actress who's playing Dana on a horse, and the internet it got up in a riot about certain things. I saw a lot of middle-aged men complaining that Bella Ramsey looks too young or something, and it's to be dealing with love interests and stuff, and it's dude, she's 20-odd-year-old. In The Last of Us Part 2, Ellie is 20-odd-year-old. Kids can look different. The problem is a lot of these middle-aged men don't realise that 20-year-olds look like 20-year-olds now because they're so far detached.
This is the issue.
It's she just looks like a kid. It's because you now think in your middle age a 20-year-old looks like a kid, whereas actually they're 20, 25. But you're used to seeing movies where they get 30-year-olds to play teens in American high schools for so long. You've got a warped perception of what a child actually looks like.
Yeah, that student who's at prom, he's got a widow's peak.
It's like another teen movie. I'm pretty sure Chris Evans is 24, 25 in that movie, playing a 17-year-old or something. So it's but we digress. But what we do get onto as we round up the show is this day in video game history. At the time of recording, 24th of May, this game in history brings us some classics such as Mario vs. Donkey Kong on the Game Boy Advance. There's not really many actually in this one.
We do have a very big one on the next day, though.
Tell you more. No, nothing more. It's Mod Nation Races on the PSP. There's a shout out. What's the big one for the next day? The 25th?
The 25th. 1 year ago, Gollum was released.
Oh, the Lord of the Rings Gollum.
Lord of the Rings Gollum. Which seems like long ago. No, it seems like it wasn't that long ago.
Yeah. I mean, we've all just forgot. I always still laugh the apology tweet that they put out to say, like, sorry, the game shit the bed. That even in the apology tweet, they didn't put Lord of the Rings. It was like Lord of Ring Gollum. Like, so they basically got AI to write their apology. It was so funny.
They were so done by that point.
It was, yeah. 6 years ago, Detroit Become Human. You mentioned Heavy Rain earlier on. Quantic Dream. That was the last game they put out. That was a story experience that was a lot more hands-on gameplay. Yeah. I really enjoyed Detroit Become Human. And actually, 6 years ago, that means Quantic Dream have done nothing. They've not put anything out for 6 years. They've got Star Wars Eclipse that they're working on, but we've seen nothing. And I believe they've since been acquired by Tencent, or it's one of them big studios. So who knows what they're doing? But they have a lot of good chops. I always think that those type of games from Quantic Dream are almost like Telltale games on steroids. Yeah, and like they're great for it. 7 years ago,
Infamous was 15 years ago. First Infamous on PlayStation 3.
15 years. To the day, or was that the next day?
That was on the 25th. Oh, sorry, the 26th.
26th. Yeah, Infamous. Can't wait. I mean, speaking of remakes, that's due one. Right? Yeah, Infamous 1 and 2 are stranded on PS3. There's no way of playing them other than if you own a PS3 right now.
Yeah.
Which is like for
an entire island of games on PlayStation 3. Yeah. Like Metal Gear Solid 4 as well. That's stuff on there.
For an exclusive, or exclusives at the time, it's mad to think that they're not ported, they're not made in some kind of collection. This is the way you think, like, it has to happen eventually. That's the great thing. Like, if the games are like anywhere near good, they will eventually get a port. Whether it takes 15 years, 20 years, 25 years, I guess the longer you wait, the bigger the pop.
I maybe guess so, but then there's like missed opportunity and
and we know Sucker Punch again. They're working on Ghosts of Tsushima 2. So they ain't going to be going back to Infamous anytime soon. So give it to another studio. Let them port. Like, give me an Infamous collection, and then if like test the waters with it, and if it's good, give us another entry. Because superhero games, like other than Spider-Man, we don't really get them as much as I think people think we do.
No, not that type of superhero as well.
Yeah, like remember Prototype as well. That's an Activision game. Xbox own that now. Give us another Prototype game. They were super crazy and fun. Shout out to Plague Inc. as well. Everyone's played Plague Inc., right? On iOS and Android back 12 years ago since Plague Inc. came out. Remember when that had a resurgence during COVID?
Yeah.
Absolute sick weirdos. They're like, I'm going to go and let's make the strand COVID-19 and try and infect the world. And look where that led us to. You weirdos. But I think that's it for this week in video game, or this day in video game history.
Yeah, it's a bit quiet going into summer, isn't it?
It is. Well, I always expect like a boon in the middle of the year. Like,
yeah.
And then heading into it. But still, good days nonetheless. But thank you to everyone who's tuned in and watched this week's episode of the Gamer Guild podcast. Thank you to Rob for coming back in Richie's stead while he's away in Rome. Not playing games, playing the game of life, holidaying and sunning it up. He will be back next week. He'll probably be back on this week's live stream to tell you everything about it and what he's been playing in the meantime. Thank you to everyone who liked, subscribed and rang that bell. Thank you to our wonderful guild heroes, the members of the channel who support us that extra little bit more from as little as 99p and get early access to this very show, stickers and badges in the live chat, and early access to any Let's Plays or live streams we put up in secret on the channel. My name's been Chris.
And I've been Rob.
Thank you very much for watching, and remember folks, play whatever makes you the happiest. Goodbye.
Goodbye.